Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. Ever find yourself caught between, the big shiny promises of innovation and the often messy reality of actually making things work? We're seeing that play out big time in spaceflight right now. So, August 26th, SpaceX, Starship Flight 10. A successful test flight, finally. Huge buzz around it, right? Lots of headlines saying Starship is back on track. And The Economist weighed in too with a pretty bold claim, the engineering is working at last. Today, we want to unpack that. Look at what Flight 10 really means when you dig a bit deeper. Because honestly, when you look at that flight, you can see why people were excited. It looked amazing. I mean, just think about the run-up to this. We saw those spectacular failures, as The Economist put it.
Right, the ones in January, March.
Exactly. Rockets blowing up, the fuel leak in May, that ground test explosion in June. It was looking rough for a bit. So Flight 10 felt like, a relief, a real step change. You had the super heavy booster splashing down in the Gulf just like they planned.
Controlled splashdown, yeah. That was a big step.
And the Starship upper stage, the bit that's caused so much trouble it got to space, deployed those dummy Starlink satellites.
8 of them. A good payload simulation.
And then, crucially, it relit a Raptor engine in space. That's a big one, right?
Oh, absolutely vital for future missions. And then the powered splashdown in the Indian Ocean.
So yeah, it really felt like, okay, maybe Starship is finally getting its act together.
It definitely did feel that way, and those achievements are genuinely fantastic engineering milestones, no question. But that headline, working at last, we need to add some nuance there. It's easy to get carried away, because what does working really mean in this context? Flight 10, for all its success, was still fundamentally a suborbital flight.
Okay, explain that difference again. It went to space, didn't it?
It did. It went high enough to reach space, but it didn't achieve the velocity needed to stay in orbit around the Earth. Think of it like launching a cannonball really high. It goes way up, maybe even above the atmosphere for a bit, but it comes straight back down. It hasn't gone fast enough horizontally to actually circle the planet. That's orbit.
Right, so it's a huge jump, but not actually flying around the Earth yet.
Exactly, and that distinction is critical. Suborbital tests like this are great for checking off boxes, engine relights, deploying things, basic control, but they don't prove the really hard stuff needed for Mars or the Moon. Stuff like achieving a stable orbit in the first place, doing precise deorbit burns from that orbit, and maybe most importantly, handling the much, much higher heat and stress during re-entry from orbital speeds. That's a whole different beast.
Ah, okay. So even though Flight 10 looked good coming down, it wasn't facing the same challenge it would if it were coming back from orbit?
Precisely. And even on this less demanding reentry, we saw issues. The Economist noted it damaged the engine skirt and singed a flap.
So damage even on a suborbital return.
Yeah, which tells you they're still finding the limits, finding those thermal and structural margins kind of the hard way, as the article put it. And remember, those water landings, while controlled, still mean the vehicle breaks up. We're not seeing reuse yet.
Right, reuse is the whole point, economically speaking.
It's fundamental to the Starship vision. Yeah. So is it progress? Absolutely. Huge progress. But is the system working in the sense of being ready for its mission, reliable, repeatable, reusable? Not yet. That's maturity, and we're not there.
That's a really important clarification. Progress, not maturity. Okay, so if the basic engineering is still in that progress phase, that brings us neatly to the second big assertion from The Economist. The schedule is still a fantasy. You hear Elon Musk's timelines, uncrewed Starship to Mars, late 2026. Uncrewed landing on the Moon, same year. Even with Flight 10's success, why does that still sound like fantasy? What's the biggest hurdle? The long pole, as they say.
Well, you hit on it. It connects directly back to the vehicle itself. Starship, as massive as it is, just can't carry enough fuel to get to Mars or the Moon and back, or even land significant mass there on a single tank.
It needs a top-up in space.
Exactly. It needs on-orbit refueling. SpaceX plans to launch multiple tanker versions of Starship, meet them up in orbit, transfer potentially thousands of tons of cryogenic propellants. That whole concept, that complex orbital dance, that is the absolute core schedule risk. It's the longest pole in the tent by far.
How complex are we talking?
We're talking, based on independent analysis, somewhere between 10 and 20 tanker launches per mission.
10 to 20, just to fuel up one Starship for the Moon or Mars.
10 to 20 launches of the biggest rocket ever built, all needing to rendezvous, dock, transfer super cold liquids without significant boil-off, all in orbit. Think about the coordination, the launch cadence required, the sheer complexity of those propellant transfers in zero-G. Nobody has ever done anything remotely like this at this scale, ever. It's not just a technical problem, it's a massive logistical and operational mountain to climb.
Okay, that really puts the schedule claims into perspective. It's not just about making Starship fly once.
Not at all. And this isn't just a SpaceX problem either.
You mean for NASA? Artemis.
Precisely. NASA's Artemis III mission, landing astronauts back on the moon, depends on Starship working as the lander. And a huge reason that mission is now looking like mid-2027 at the earliest is because the entire plan hinges on this massive, unproven, on-orbit refueling architecture working perfectly.
So Flight 10, well, good news for the basic rocket.
Didn't really move the needle on that refueling challenge at all. That long pole is still just as long today as it was before Flight 10.
Understood. Okay, another angle the Economist mentioned was the constant upgrades, this Block 2 moving to Block 3 for Starship. What does that mean for a program like this? Does constantly changing the design help or hinder when you're on such an ambitious path? It sounds a bit like building the plane while flying it.
That analogy is pretty spot on, actually. And this block churn is, well, it's both a feature and a risk of how SpaceX operates.
A double-edged sword.
Sort of, yeah. On the one hand, iterating quickly like, this is amazing for making rapid progress.
Yeah.
You find a problem, you tweak the design, you test again. Heat tiles, flaps, engines, the connections they're constantly refining, it shows incredible agility.
But the downside?
The downside is that every major block jump means you're essentially resetting parts of your learning curve. You introduce new components, new interfaces, new potential failure modes. Things you thought you'd solved might need revalidating. So we should absolutely expect these step back, step forward cycles.
So not every glitch or problem we see is necessarily a sign of disaster?
Exactly. It's often just part of that really aggressive iterative learning process. It's messy, especially at this scale, but it's kind of baked into their approach.
Okay, so we have this messy reality. Engineering challenges still being worked through, schedules looking fantastical, constant design changes. And yet, we also hear SpaceX's valuation is reportedly hitting something like $400 billion in private markets, making it one of the most valuable private companies anywhere. How do you square that? How can the valuation soar when the flagship project has these major hurdles and delays?
That's a great question, and it catches a lot of people out. The key is understanding SpaceX isn't just Starship. You have to look at it as a portfolio.
The Starlink angle.
Precisely. Starlink, their satellite internet constellation, is already a massive business. It's generating significant growing cash flow. That's real revenue happening now. So the private market valuation isn't only betting on Mars landings in 2026, it's looking at the existing, thriving Starlink business.
And seeing Starship progress, even incremental progress like Flight 10, as adding potential future value on top of that.
Exactly. The Starlink cash flow supports a high valuation on its own, and then Starship provides the massive future growth story, even if that future is further out than the initial projections. So it actually is coherent for the valuation to climb while the Starship to Mars schedule slips. The market is valuing the whole enterprise.
That makes sense. It raises a good point for you listening, too. How do you weigh that inspiring vision and the huge financial backing against the nuts and bolts, the sometimes slow, messy grind of engineering?
It's rarely a straight line, is it?
Definitely not. So, looking forward then, what are the absolute must-haves, the non-negotiable next steps for Starship to actually deliver on its promise? What should we be watching for?
Okay, the critical proof points. The things that aren't optional if this is going to work. First, clean orbital insertion, not just reaching space, but getting into a stable orbit. Then a controlled deorbit from that orbit, and crucially, a survivable reentry for the vehicle itself. Orbital reentry is way hotter, way tougher than what Flight 10 experienced.
So survive coming back from actual orbit. Got it.
Second, repeatable engine relights in space. They did one on Flight 10. Great start. They need to show they can do it reliably multiple times if needed, flight after flight.
Consistency is key.
Third, the heat shield and the whole structure need to withstand those much higher orbital reentry energies without the kind of damage we saw this time. Fewer tiles falling off, basically.
Makes sense. And the big one.
And the big one, the absolute linchpin for Moon and Mars. An on-orbit propellant transfer demonstration. And not just, connecting some pipes. We need to see them transfer useful amounts of cryogenic fuel reliably between two starships in orbit.
That's the gateway to everything else.
Pretty much. Without proving that, the whole deep space architecture remains theoretical.
So what does success actually look like over the next year or two, say 2025 into 2026?
Success in the near term probably looks, well, kind of boring. Honestly, it should be fewer fireworks, more boring data.
Less spectacular, more routine.
It's exactly. routine orbital flights, much less tile shedding on reentry, predictable splashdowns, or even better, starting to nail those return-to-pad tower catches. Seeing the Block 3 version graduate from testing to become the operational standard. If they can nail those things consistently through 2025, then maybe 2026 starts to become about demonstrating refueling and building launch cadence. But first things first, get to orbit and back reliably.
That really grounds the whole discussion. Flight 10 was clearly important, a big psychological boost maybe, but the mountain ahead is still immense. Those unprecedented challenges, especially refueling.
It's easy to get swept up, isn't it? The vision is so compelling. But for you, the listener, maybe the takeaway is this. With these huge technological leaps, progress isn't always loud explosions or dramatic successes. Often, the real hard-won progress is in the quiet, painstaking work of making something incredibly difficult seem routine, reliable, even boring. That gap between a single successful test and a truly working, reliable system, that's vast. And that's where the real story of Starship is going to play out, moving from working at last to, hopefully, working always.
Thanks for listening. Follow us to stay updated with the latest insights on The Economist every day, and don't forget to like, comment, and share.